a single mother surviving on government welfare, battling clinical depression and thoughts of suicide. Years later, she would become the world's first billionaire author. The origin of that trajectory traces back to a delayed train traveling from Manchester to London. A 25-year-old woman is sitting in a carriage, and suddenly the fully formed image of a scrawny boy who discovers he's a wizard drops into her mind. She was Joanne Rowling. Her parents had heavily pressured her to take a secure, salaried secretarial job. She ignored that advice, choosing to study English literature and commit to a creative life, even without a financial safety net. But a vivid image on a train is just a starting point. The coming years would test whether that spark could survive the weight of extreme poverty and personal loss. By her late 20s, Rowling was living in a cramped, freezing flat in Edinburgh, Scotland. She had fled a brief, abusive marriage in Portugal and was now navigating single motherhood with zero financial resources. Because she couldn't afford a typewriter or heating, she would walk the city streets until her infant daughter fell asleep in her stroller, then duck into local cafes to write out her manuscript entirely by hand. She was also processing profound grief. Her mother had passed away in 1990 from multiple sclerosis. Rowling poured that unresolved pain directly onto the page, anchoring a children's fantasy story in heavy, pervasive themes of grief and loss. Her dire circumstances triggered a diagnosis of clinical depression. She externalized that suffocating feeling into the story by inventing dementors, creatures that physically drain all happiness from a room. After 5 years of meticulous world-building and writing in those cafes, she finally completed the manuscript for Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Completing a massive book under extreme duress is a triumph of endurance, but a manuscript doesn't become a book until it survives the rigid, analytical filters of the professional publishing industry. This map visualizes her submission strategy. Rowling sent her completed manuscript to 12 major, established publishing houses across the UK. Every single one of them sent back a rejection letter. The editorial consensus was that the book broke too many industry rules. The word count was far too long for a children's book, and the themes of death and depression were considered too complex. Receiving a rejection letter is standard for a writer. Enduring 12 consecutive professional dismissals and deliberately preparing a 13th submission requires a remarkable level of psychological resilience. The gatekeepers were operating on standard market analytics. Their strict reliance on proven formulas blinded them to the deep emotional resonance of the story sitting right in front of them. A year later, the manuscript found its way to Bloomsbury, a relatively small publishing house. The breakthrough didn't happen in a boardroom. The firm's chairman brought the first chapter home and handed it to his 8-year-old daughter, Alice Newton. She read it immediately and marched back downstairs demanding Chapter 2. Based entirely on her reaction, Bloomsbury agreed to publish the book. They offered Rowling a tiny advance, an upfront payment against future royalties, of just £1,500, and explicitly advised her to keep her day job because there was no real money in children's literature. The purest form of market research, the genuine, unprompted enthusiasm of a single child, completely bypassed the multi-million-dollar analytical systems designed to predict what audiences wanted. Harry Potter hit shelves in 1997. Initial sales were slow, but an unstoppable wave of word-of-mouth recommendations quickly outpaced any need for a traditional marketing campaign. Within a few years, millions of readers were queuing outside bookstores at midnight. That single manuscript expanded into a 7-book series, 8 blockbuster films, and a sprawling empire of merchandise and theme parks. The story saturated global culture, translating into over 80 languages, connecting with adults and children alike. The woman who had relied on state welfare became significantly wealthier than the British monarch. She eventually dropped off the Forbes billionaire list entirely because she chose to donate massive portions of her wealth to charity. Rowling has frequently noted that her time at rock bottom stripped away everything non-essential. If she had allowed the 12th rejection to permanently define her worth, the world would have never known Hogwarts. Joanne Rowling transformed her personal struggle into her creative engine. Today, she is one of the most influential writers on Earth. proving that while you cannot control the opening chapters of your life, you are the one holding the pen for the rest.